What is consciousness? And what does it mean to truly live life awake? Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, a podcast where we transcend beyond stereotypes, embracing a deeper understanding. I'm your host, Kristen Griffiths, a fellow seeker on this path. Join me on a journey as we dive into conversations with experts, unraveling stigmas, and expanding our awareness to something profound. This is your invitation to open your mind with me as together we bring clarity to the fascinating complexities of human consciousness. Welcome to the Clarity to Consciousness podcast. Thanks for coming back as we finish our interview with Colleen St, a spiritual teacher who specializes in intuitive development. In this half of the interview, we will clarify what it means to be clairvoyant, how intuition helps us find our purpose, and how to trust the intuitive pings you're getting. Enjoy! So, when we're trying to listen to, and I'm using listening quotes too, because I'm not even sure if it's something you hear, and not necessarily with your ears, but through your mind, or they talk about the gut feeling. So that's a feeling, right, in your body. So I'm wondering if somebody's trying to understand how to do it. Like, for example, I like to say push notifications. So a lot of times they come through as push notifications, at least for me. And it was like, you should do a podcast. Like, a podcast would be great. Wouldn't a podcast feel cool? And like, then it became a stronger urge, like, do the podcast. But
when you get sick of yourself, that your intuition is like, I always said, like, it's like that meme with the guardian angel with the big jug of wine, like throwing the big wine glass back, it's like, come on.
Yes. So could it come in all kinds of forms? Just for people who are trying to figure it out, like, how do you do it? How do you know?
What senses? So the sixth sense, in a sense, which we talked about at the beginning, is actually your first sense. Uses all of your senses as a communication system, right? So we have something called spiritual sight, which is clairvoyancy, spiritual hearing, clairaudient, spiritual feeling, clairsentience, spiritual smelling, clairsentient, right? And then we have claircognizance, which is clear knowing. It's knowing but not knowing why. So we all have these clairs, but not all of them are operational all at the same time. When you learn to fine tune the muscle, like I always say, it's like working out. You're building muscle, but you got to trust the muscle. You can't just go into the gym and throw up 350 and think you're like a superstar, right? You usually start with 5-10 pounds and allow yourself to start trusting yourself to keep adding weight. Usually we have one clair that stands out more than the others, and that could be claircognizance, which is like thoughts that come through, but you don't know where they come from, right? And clairsentience, which is the feeling. It's like that gut feeling that you get, like something doesn't feel right, or you may go into an office and it just feels real heavy, or like I don't like the feeling of antique stores. Like I feel very nauseous in antique stores, right? So that was all like the energy. I just didn't like the feel of it. So it comes through these impressions that will kind of connect with one of the clairs. Typically, I have found the feeling, that's like the gut, right? The feeling of like that inner, like something doesn't feel right. And I did learn that the gut feeling feels different than my nervous belly. The gut feeling is kind of higher up, and it's like right under the rib cage is where I tend to feel it. Like that's where a lot of my clients say they feel it. So just to differentiate, it's like, well, what part of the belly are we feeling it in? Like, is it, like a stomach cramp, or is it like a stomach pain, or is it just like a tightening? So in the upper stomach is typically where that you feel that, where it's like above your belly button. In the inner knowing, the claircognizance, that is just thoughts come through, but there's really no like proof as to where it comes. It's just like that inner knowing. An example is, have you ever listened to someone talking? You almost could finish the story for them because it's like you know what they're going to say next or how they're going to say it, right? Claircognizance is probably the one that gets missed the most because people dismiss it as their own thoughts. So when we can identify as to, is this my thoughts? And the way that I've learned to do it for myself is, if it's my thoughts or ego thoughts, there could be judgment attached to it. There could be some negativity. When it comes through claircognizance, it's like I hear my voice, but it's softer. It's like, it doesn't speak in like, it doesn't speak with starting with the sentence like, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like it just is, it's just information. And so it's like a text. Do we really know how text gets from your phone to mine? Right? Like,
not really.
No, I don't.
It just magically appears.
Exactly. It's like it's traveling throughout this whole system and appearing, right? So I always like to say claircognizance feels for me like a text message coming in. Like the origin of where it came from in the universe, I'm not certain, but I just know it's coming through and that it's trusted. If you've ever worked with someone or talked to someone who came to you for support and you were able to support them through it, but yet have no experience in what it is they're going through, but somehow you just knew how and what to share with them to help them through this. Well, that's all your claircognizance. Like that's all your inner knowing. So a lot of times our intuition first speaks through our inner thoughts, not the intrusive thoughts. That's a different story. These are our inner thoughts, and a lot of them feel very inspiring. Repetition is a way to recognize it. You said it. It was like I remember when you first got the intuitive pang to start a podcast, right? And so you marinated in it for a minute, right? And why? Because
long time.
But it's okay, right? Because the frustration got greater than the fear, right? You got frustrated not doing something. So the frustration of not doing became greater than the fear of doing. Right?
I know that feeling.
Oh,
yes.
Completely. That's how I started my business, is that, on paper, it looked like a giant bad idea. Like a really, really bad idea. But the reality, it became the greatest thing I ever did. And I always say our intuitive selves think and dream bigger than our greatest accomplishment on our mental list. Right? That's the beginning of their list, because our intuitive selves know that we're so much capable. We can only limit ourselves to this would be great if I reach this. Well, according to your intuition and your higher self, that's just the starting point of greatness. Right? So it's such a different perspective on what we're capable of.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is so true. Like the logic of, I'm just going to use this podcast for example, because everybody understands what I'm talking about.
Right.
Like the logic of creating a podcast, like I couldn't, like if I started to like write it down on paper, like it wouldn't add up. You know, I'm like, I don't really have the time to do this. I don't necessarily have the money to invest, but I'm going to invest in it blindly. But what kept me going was really the passion to do it. There's just some passion driving force that's pushing me forward, that's making me stop questioning those other things.
Right.
And just do.
The 3 Ps: purpose, passion, and profit. They can all be companions, right? And so passion is an investment that the world is starting to get and see the value in. But we've been so conditioned that the only value is the value in our bank accounts. But we've completely neglected our spiritual accounts. We've completely people are miserable because at some point they stop doing what they love to support what they do in life, right? We're in this country specifically, we're just so, built to do the grind, and when are we taught that we have to do things that feed us as individuals? as parents, if a partner goes to the gym, I hear a lot of times, well, let's just, I'm stuck here, I'm do this. It's like people grow apart when they grow away from themselves, right?
Mm.
And it's like, if we support our own passions and, bring them into, a relationship or whatnot, but there has to be something that creates an exhale outside of what we do, right? What we do for work is a quarter of why we're here, right? But yet we're so conditioned that your work is your world when you start adulting. And I'm passionate and profitable and purposeful in what I do. So I'm like really blessed. But
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn balance to allow myself to do other things just in this, because I was a workaholic just because I was like, I'm filling all my baskets up. Like, I'm so happy, but I was kind of separated from like regular fun things, like, and I needed to be all of me in life, not just in
Yeah.
one functional place. And so the passion is so important, right? It's like, I knew myself when I was reinventing my world because I came crashing down. And the scariest question that I asked myself, or my intuition asked me, was left with a blank piece of paper for quite some time. And that's, who are you? And what do you want? And I was like, nothing. Blank piece of paper. And it scared me because I realized that I knew what everybody else needed. And at some point lost the pulse of asking myself, well, what do I want? Well, who am I? So it was really unsettling, right? And I see this a lot with people who retire. They go into these deep depressions, right? And really it's grief. They're
Mm.
going through grief because there's an identity that is lost. They're grieving who they were. They're grieving what they thought life was going to look like. They're grieving the structure of every day. And it's because throughout that place, they built their identity off of what they did for work.
Yeah.
So
That
tuition
I
helps us to identify who are we and what are we contributing via work.
Yes, that's so. I'm glad you mentioned that because that's something that in the past few years has really become evident to me. I think about my life and I think that if I got to the end of my life and I feel like I didn't do or contribute what I was supposed to do or contribute something to this world that I was proud of, I think I'd leave feeling that grief or
Yeah.
depression or sadness. And so I'm actually quite grateful that I'm pursuing something that gives me passion, that I feel passionate about, that gives me purpose.
It's an
That
exhale. It's an exhale out
yeah.
of, and who knows what this will blossom into, right? It's like this could
Hmm.
be just that safe space that you can hold sacred for you, or could create something on a very different scale, right? And it's like the unknown can be very inviting, because what are the possibilities? What if, like going back to
Yes.
that place again and embodying that on such a different level. And know when your intuition gives you an idea of inspiration that it's time to travel on this journey and shift directions, it also supports you with the opportunities to financially support it. It supports you with the people, right? So if you're in a position where you're being called to change, to shift, to just move directions, you're also being called to listen and be aware of the people coming into your world, the opportunities that are being, presented to you, and the finances to support these endeavors, right? It's like we're not going to be asked something intuitively to do and then be left broke. It's like that
Yeah.
just creates, that's a human design, right? I always say, like,
Hmm.
I stole the wheel from Jesus way too many times trying to like maneuver through
Hmm.
life's challenges, thinking like, I'll get the inspirational idea and then I'll just grab the wheel and ram the car and then blame Jesus for
Hmm.
turning it over to me when I was the one. So it's like we need to take accountability for what is in our way? What's blocking us from our belief that change can be possible in a positive way, or that you are worthy of a healthy relationship, or that you're capable of having a successful landing pad of whatever it may be, and because we take things so personally, we attach ourselves that it's, I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, I'm not this. And reality is, when you've ever had an experience that didn't work out for you, right? How many times could people say, woof, I dodged that bullet. But in that moment, you wanted
Mm-hmm.
it so badly. Often our intuition or our guides around us will shift us if it's not in our alignment for our highest good. Some things we do have to grow through that are uncomfortable, but there's many things that we have been purposely removed from because it's not in our highest good. But yet we hold it as a personal rejection or abandonment or not good enough. It just plays off those inner triggers that we're hiding emotions and not allowing ourselves to just look at it and be like, you know what? I'm just not aligned with that.
Mm-hmm. That the alignment's another topic that's really, really great. I'm glad that you brought that up. People experience doors not opening for them
Mm-hmm.
consistently. Maybe they want to get somewhere, they want to move somewhere in their career. Those doors keep slamming in their face.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're aligned, it seems like you're being well supported. So using the podcast for example again. I was always presented with the person that I needed to help me get to the next step
Correct.
relatively easily. Like I needed a sound guy here, somebody recommended somebody and they were available and they could help me. Guests, people recommended guests. Guests came, they were available, they were, so it's been aligned for me. But there was definitely times in my career where I looked to get a job and that job didn't,
Pan out.
didn't come through, and I was, and you feel that rejection.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like that alignment is a sign that you're going in the right path. Would you agree?
It is, but we also have to have patience, and we have to understand things can be aligned, but we are resisting the opportunities, right? So if your core belief is that you don't succeed, then guess what? You can show up all day long, but you're not going to align yourself with successful opportunities if your
Mm-hmm.
mindset is set in that, how many times in working with women and moving through, or even men working through the challenges of finding a partner that they're in alignment with, right? Well, when I do an exercise where I ask them, okay, I want you to actually share with me, write down your first instinct on me telling you, hey, I have a really great person I want you to meet. They're super healthy. I think you'll really like them. The negative responses that come through to distrust are overwhelming, right? So unconsciously, if you're saying like, oh man, I only attract losers. I only attract, like, even joking with it consistently, like, oh, I'm a jerk magnet. Well, guess what? You are, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're with a situation that is not what your core value is, what you want, then you are responsible for making the change, right? Because that's alignment is about, okay, this is what I desire. And I'm going to do my work and remove the obstacles that are standing in front of me receiving my desire. Because I could say to you, hey, I have a healthy person, blah, 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 blah. You're going to love them when you meet them. Well, guess what? When you meet them, you're not going to trust them because healthy is not familiar to you. You may say you want it, but you haven't
Yeah.
aligned yourself to actually saying yes to the opportunity. Doubt is not something that's uncommon, right? But if you're living in a space of doubt, right? If you're living in a space, it's like, I'm never going to get a job. I'm never going to get a job. I'm never going to get a job. You're never going to get a job, right? People
Mm-hmm.
who speak of like, oh, this economy, you can't get a new job in this economy, this and this. There's people getting new jobs all the time, right? Are you vibrationally aligning yourself with the belief that it's going to happen? And another
Mm-hmm.
tip with alignment is, like, a lot of people live in regret. And that is a anchor that is a thief to their alignments to things, because they're always living in the past regret. And the one thing I learned with our energy, right? So if we want to look at our energy as this big satellite system, and it emanates out through our soul's energy, right? So it's like we have this huge aura around us, this energy. And then when things that are on our destined soul's path to accomplish, they are in orbit, right? So when opportunities that are in our soul's design to experience, it's not a one and done. It's not like that was my one big shot. It will orbit back around in another way or another opportunity. And most times it's when we're more willing to say yes to it, or have grown through experiences that have been holding us back. But if something is truly designed that we are meant to experience in this evolution in Earth School, it will reappear back into our world. And that's what we have to understand, is that most people, regret is a thief to your potential future, because you're always ruminating on the idea that I should have done this and we're missing this. That's right in front of you. So when we're experiencing alignment, it doesn't feel forced. It just is like, doesn't mean we don't work, right? I work incredibly hard, but I'm aligned with what I'm working towards. If I'm feeling the struggle, like everything is just hitting me in the face, I know maybe I'm not in alignment, and I'm trying to force things to work because maybe I'm backed by fear. Maybe I'm backed by self-doubt. Maybe I'm backed by uncertainty. But when we're really in that flow, do you ever have an experience where like everything just lines up for you and you're like, I didn't even do anything. All I did was, yeah, that's exactly why it happened so beautifully, because you didn't do anything. It's like, I work with angels, and they always used to say, Colleen, stop messing with the blessing. Because as soon as my energy got in it at times, I was trying to either fast forward things or, my impatience got to me, and it's like I wasn't allowing the timing to be in the proper alignment. I was trying to, fast pass the alignment, and it never worked out. So everything does happen at the aligned time. And that's where we just have to, ask ourselves, well, what's in front of it? What am I impulsively trying to push through that I'm not just being present?
Yeah. That's really helpful. One other thing before we wrap up, I did want to get into just this understanding of the difference between, as I mentioned, sometimes intuitive pings come, or you just get this sense and you act upon it. But sometimes, if you're going through a situation and you're not sure what to do, sometimes intuition would be real nice. And maybe you don't necessarily feel like you have that ping. So when you're seeking for guidance, how do you do it successfully and avoid something like a false flag or bad misinformation? Do you have any tips on that?
Yes. Because so often people will say, I really felt like my intuition told me to do this, right?
Yeah.
So we have something that we're going to step into like our soul a little bit, right? Because this is all interconnected. So our soul has a conscious, right? That's our old soul, young soul. That's our intuition, inspiration, all comes through like our soul. It's like our motherboard of the computer. So our operating system that we have, that's working within us. And we have something called karma, and karma is energy of experiences that help us through Earth School, right? So karma is not a punishment, right? So often you'll see people be like, karma bitch, or, this, it doesn't work like that, right? It's like basically they're putting bad voodoo on them. So karma is not a punishment. Karma is an energy exchange, right? And karmic bonds between situations and people, it means if there is a karmic interchangeable relationship at some point, there was something karmically that needed to happen. often we extend our karmic, bonds, but typically when a karma is finished, it's like, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But we usually hang on for whatever reasons, right? Whether it's karma with a job, a person, or a situation. So sometimes your intuition will say, this person or this situation is in the path of alignment, right? Of your intuition.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's because you need to exercise the karmic bond that's in that situation.
Ah,
Right.
okay.
So sometimes we can be like, people will be like, why the heck? My intuition told me this would be okay for me. Right. And when
Yeah.
they did it, then they were like, I don't even trust myself anymore. Like, I just can't. No, we're not given the gift of our life book, because if we did, we'd never show up for a day. Right. We'd always read ahead. No one would stay on the page you're at. Like, and everybody would take a peek and be like,
Yes.
hell no, am I showing up? Like, I'm going to stay in my hole and not do. So in that design of our life book, we have karmic bonds or debts that need to be cleared. That's how we evolve on a soul level and grow. Well, that exchange may very well be, and probably is, a karmic debt that has been completed. And typically, if there's endings, people feel that they take it personally, right? You can trust your intuition. Even obstacles that come out, right? I remember knowing my intuition was right, following the footsteps,
Mm-hmm.
and then bam, a little bomb went off in front of my master plan. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like,
Yeah.
and in that moment, I was mad and I was untrusting, but in reality, that little bomb saved me from a massive explosion down the road. So sometimes when obstacles come into our path, we ask for the path of least resistance. That doesn't mean there's no resistance. It just means the least resistance, the least amount of obstacles, the clearest path. But there's still maybe a route that comes up through that path that we trip on, right? And that's a learning opportunity, right? So if we become aware that life is teaching us because it's triggering us, we will take it less personally. Right? So if we feel triggered by someone, then we need to go in and intuitively heal. Where is that source of us? Because we can't be triggered by something that doesn't bother us, right? If it's not your issue, it doesn't become your trigger. So when we're growing through our intuitiveness and trying to seek guidance, ask yourself, well, what's sitting on top of me listening? What's sitting on top of, like, what's having honest, intuitive conversations with yourself to heal? I remember wanting to grow the business and realizing I still had the mindset of fear as when I started the business. But it was so automated and it was so unvalidated. I had blown through all those fears that I had, but yet when I was making a pivot, I didn't realize that core belief was still on, like, my mission statement, like a brand. But I didn't fit. I already proved myself wrong that I could do it. I already proved myself that I was capable. So when we do these self check-ins, we're just checking in to say, okay, do I still believe this? Does this feel right in me? Like, if I was talking to a friend, would I believe that in them? Right? And often when we kind of take ourselves out of the equation and look at ourselves from just a neutral position, it's like, wow, like, I don't believe that. Like I am capable, right? And it's like, what are we afraid of? People laughing at us? Why? Well, if people are going to laugh at me for trying, then let them, let them sit and laugh all day for not doing, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you said about making the contribution to the world. I remember in that space where I was, like I said, I wasn't happy, I wasn't unhappy, I was just like neutral. I was just kind of robotically going through the life. And I remember listening, and I wish I could remember the book. It was a gentleman who was on tour speaking, but he had pancreatic cancer. He was a professor, and he would go all around to the colleges. And someone said to him that they asked him that why was he spending his last days, it might be last lecture, I think that's what it's called.
Last lecture.
And why was he spending his time talking to hundreds of thousands of people rather than being with his family. And he said, because the idea of dying, not dying empty, scares the hell out of me.
Wow.
That made me cry because
Yeah.
I was so
Yeah.
scared that I was going to die empty. Like that fear of hearing him make that impact statement. And my first instinct was, I'm going to die full.
Yeah.
Like that was really, it pressed me and it like hit my soul in a hard way.
Yeah.
And whenever I think of that about making change, I always think like, I don't want to die full. Like I want to die empty. And think about if we die empty, we're dying light. We're dying freer, more able to know that we did in life. We appreciated it. And it doesn't have to be, and people think that our soul's purpose has to be like, these outlandish Elon Musk kind of moments, right? They're actually meant to be moments where we can find joy. Like on our life list is to be joyful, to laugh, to be kind. Like how many people sit out and were like, I want to find my life's purpose. That's part of it. Right? Like being joyful, being happy, being in the moment, like being just present is part of our life's purpose. And it's not always what we invent, what we do, but how do we contribute energy into the collective cup? Right? It's like if I'm a shitty person and I'm going out and spreading shitty energy, that's what I'm spreading in the collective cup. But part of my purpose is if I'm meant to be someone of light and joy and happiness, then guess what? When I step in, that is contributing to the collective cup of energy. So our purpose looks very different and often can feel it's more personal, our purpose. And a lot of times people make it more of a collective purpose.
Yeah. Wow, this has been so great. I've learned so much. You're such a wealth of knowledge. I love talking to you, and we're just scratching the surface. I feel like there's so many things we could talk about. So I would love it if you came back.
Of course.
And we can dig into another topic.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. That means so
I am.
much.
I really am.
That means so much.
I was so excited.
Oh, thank you. Well, you helped get me here. So,
well, the beauty of it is, don't you feel this, is that the things that we struggle with are the things we end up teaching. Right? It's like often, like I had trouble trusting myself. So what do? I mastered my position of understanding it, right? And I want to share that with people so that they don't struggle, right? It's like you're sharing that vulnerability of like, oh my gosh, I sat in this doubt and about starting the podcast, but like, you know what? I did it. It's like, that is inspiring, right? Most people talk about themselves when they've won. Like I talk about all the areas of it because you know what? When I wasn't winning, I didn't want to hear another winner story. Like I wanted to hear.
It's so frustrating.
It is, because then when you're not feeling it, you don't feel like you could ever be it. But you know what? When you are, sharing that thing, it's like, God, I sat with that idea of starting a podcast forever. When people share the realness of growth, that creates inspiration with people. And that's like, it's kind of like, I got you because I know where you were. Like, let me do the cliff notes. Like, let me share them. Like, I can get the shortest way possible, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping others take out of this, is that I don't claim to know everything. I'm learning from all of you at the same time that they are. So
absolutely,
learn with me.
We're masters and students. That's the coolest thing. It's like, you're awesome at X, Y, and Z. Well, that's my not awesome space. Like I might not be great at that. So that's the coolest thing. It's like, I love to learn. Like I want more, like I'm a sponge, and that's where your listeners are really gonna be able to evolve into this amazing, conscious journey with you. And I think that's pretty great.
Thank you. So in closing, just a few questions that I am going to ask all my guests. And so the first question is, reflecting on today's conversation, what would you say is one key takeaway that you'd like our listeners to remember about consciousness or spirituality or intuition?
Zoinks. Let's say one, that you already have it in you. It's just remembering who you are. Intuition is already within you. So it's not like you're learning it as, you've never done it. You may not be familiar with it. So when you're learning how to hear it, you're going through the practice steps of kind of fine tuning the frequency or the dialing in of the station to hear what it's saying clearly. So don't be hard on yourself if you're questioning your ability to trust yourself. You just maybe need to tune that frequency in a little bit. And it may just be something small as there's fear in there, or there's an emotional response to something, or there's somebody's opinion that's sitting on top of you of like, oh, you can't trust yourself. It's like no one trusts. Like it's whatever, those little tiny things create big blockages from us believing in ourselves.
There was one thing you taught me once that, and I think actually you pulled it out of, I think you channeled it during a reading from one of my guides. And it was something to the effect of when it's the ego responding, it takes like 5 or 6 seconds to get the answer. But when it's truly your higher self, or you're meant to hear it from a higher being, it comes immediately.
So if that's the claircognizance, it's almost like if the information is coming through, if you're sitting, I like pen and paper, right? So I like actual pen and paper and be like, okay, what do I need to know? What's blocking me, right? So in asking that question, it's a process of shielding your energy, asking your ego to step out, and then the first response that comes through, what's blocking me? First response, write it down. Most people overlook that first response because they think they know the question, so they're making up the answer too. And our intuition speaks through that quick response because it's a part of you. It does know the answer. And your ego does need 5 to 6 seconds to ramp up. So if you're saying what's blocking me and one word comes up or one phrase or one feeling comes up, trust that, write that down. Because in a couple of seconds, you're probably going to get inundated with like many confusing things.
Yeah.
Right. So if that comes up, that's one way to discern between which is my intuition speaking and which is my ego speaking.
That's so helpful. The next question is if someone's just starting this journey towards deeper understanding of consciousness, what advice would you offer them?
Focus on their awareness because intuition speaks through awareness. If we're living life unaware or unconscious, right? So if you're looking to, someone asked me once before, what is enlightenment, right? So we're lightening up our mind to let the light in, right? So enlightenment means we're adding light to the situation. So think of a dark room. It's like when we add light, we can see. So awareness is key in what do I think? How do I respond? It's not judging. It's just being aware of what is the automated internal systems telling us. So many people are awakening now because their souls are like, zip, we're done negotiating with life. You're meant to be on a path and this is not it. We're not meant to be sacrificing joy for this. We're not meant to be suffering in this situation. And so when we are beginning out, the first thing you can do is be kind to yourself, right? Because you can't judge the version of yourself before you became awakened, right? You just have to be aware of what are the patterns that keep consistently showing up that trigger me to either, recoil my energy and hide, or react or just to have conflict in my own head and not make action, right? So it's like, what needs to be healed, or what was it that stood in front of me believing that I couldn't do something? Your awareness is key to everything. And just, you can do an exercise of just going outside, closing your eyes, and being aware of all the sounds that are around you. Listen to when the birds pay attention to the car honking, pay attention, whatever it may be. that helps strengthen your awareness of what's environmentally happening and what is, happening around you. Put your phone down too. That's another.
That helps. That helps. My last question for you today is, in your opinion, what does it mean to live life consciously?
I feel living life consciously means living life awake and aware and intuitively, right? So when we live consciously, we're aligning ourselves with intuition, intentional, and then action, right? So it's like the connectivity, it's flow, right? Living conscious is, am I doing this because someone else wants me to do it? Or am I doing it because I choose to do it? Am I making this move because I truly feel that this will be the best for me? Or am I making it because I am, feeling pressure? Like knowing how to have conscious conversations with yourself. And just, I always say there's a crime inside and I'm the investigator, right? It's like, it's questioning and asking yourself, well, when did I first feel like this? Like, why did I feel that I wasn't enough? Or when was it that I stopped believing in myself? What experience happened that allowed me to believe someone else's false beliefs about me? And that is consciousness, being conscious of what it is that is coming through our thoughts, that we're all interconnected, that compassion does not mean a non-compassion for yourself. It means inclusion, right? That I can have compassion and love for you, but that doesn't mean to disrespect myself and not trust myself in my decision, right? It's like I can still love people, but not want them in my life, right? And so the consciousness, a higher consciousness, helps us just to look at a visual of the world differently, rather than from that wounded or that unawakened state where we're just hyper focused on the minute, the moment, and impulse.
Wow, that was great.
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
have been such an amazing guest. So how can listeners stay connected with you or access more information on the topics we've discussed today?
So you can visit my website at ColleenStMichaels.com. I offer spiritual guidance sessions, which are just a little bit longer, and topic sessions where if there's something that you're looking for support with, it just helps you to move through the session, and you leave with a blueprint of like, what do we need to work on to release? I have Soulful Solutions programs where it's like a 4-week program where we actually work together and move through the challenges, move through the obstacles, clear out the blockages, and really kind of fast forward that process. I work with coaches and also therapists and helping them to intuitively develop, to integrate the power of what they have gone to school for with the intuition, which helps this really fantastic therapy sessions and coaching sessions, because it helps people to move through challenges much more effectively. So I have different programs that I customize for individuals based off of where you're at, and I offer a complimentary discovery call. So on the website you can book that, and we can go from there.
Awesome.
Yay.
And also your podcast, Ask Colleen.
Oh, yes. So Ask Colleen, I have a podcast weekly that's called Ask Colleen, Spiritual Solutions for Life Situations. I'm excited because I formerly had Love I Own, Living Change, and really felt this call to kind of like, I love questions. I love when people ask me questions, because that's when we can tap into our intuition, pull from the reservoir of experience of working for 2 decades with clients, and share that wisdom. And it's so important that I was just so excited because I'm on the first season. I just launched a few weeks ago, so we're new into the season. I started with an intuition series in the beginning, and then the next series I'm working on is for March will be for angels, learning about angels, and then the next for April will be mediumship. So I wanted to start with this foundation and then build it off of where people can actually send me questions and I can answer them on air. My dream is to have it actually call in, so people can call in and ask questions, because that would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
That's probably midsummer.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we'll have to, keep an eye out for that. And
Absolutely.
I've listened to your first couple episodes, and they've been really, really great.
Thank you.
And I'm proud of you as well.
Oh,
So
thank you. Thank
thank
you. I
thank
appreciate it.
you. So thanks so much for sharing your wisdom insights today. I just think you're such a fantastic guest.
Ah,
I'm so happy you're here.
thank
And
you.
thank you all for listening. Until next time, bye for now. Before we part ways, I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for tuning in. Your curiosity and openness make this journey all the more meaningful. As we navigate the realms of consciousness together, please follow our podcast for more captivating conversations. If you enjoyed what you heard, why not share the love, rate and review on your favorite platform, and help us reach more seekers on this enlightening path. And hey, the conversation doesn't end here. Dive into the show notes for additional insights, resources, and details about today's discussion. Your journey to clarity continues beyond this episode. Thank you so much for being a part of the Clarity to Consciousness community. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the boundless possibilities of your consciousness. Take care and much love to you all.